Hello, everyone. This is Shanei Born, CJ, and Alejandro Bratti from the Believe in Yourself, Believe in Your Business TV show. And we welcome you to the Spanglish World Network on Singo TV channel 250 and 251. So please remember to download the Singo TV app on your app store in iOS or Android. And while you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Singo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, and Roku sticks, and on all smart TV devices from 2016 forward. And today we welcome Leif. How are you, Leif?
I'm doing fantastic today. How are you, Shanei?
I'm doing very well, thank you. We're so happy to have you here.
Happy to be here. Thank you. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to share my story with all your viewers.
That's awesome.
Thank you. And CJ, how are you? Tell me a little bit about how is Toronto today.
Toronto's nice and bright and sunny, and trying to keep up with New Mexico and Mexico.
That's nice. And Shanei, how is in South Africa? Is it cold? Still cold or?
Yeah. We're also almost in the middle of winter, and the weather is kind of strange. Normally we don't have rain and stuff during our winter season, but every now and again there's a little rain, so it's getting really cold. But it's still good. It's still good.
Great. So everyone, you know that if you are connecting with any social media and you want to leave any comment, you have any questions, you have anything that to share during the conversation that we have, you are more than welcome to write and connect with us. Leif, really, this is a pleasure to be with you, connecting here and ready to hear your story. I know that it's a very amazing story, so I am really looking forward for everything that you're going to be telling us today. The first thing, this program is called Believe in Yourself, Believe in Your Business, because we really believe that is how everything starts. What is your belief system and what are you believing? So sometimes happens that we realize that we are not believing really in ourselves. And that is exactly what starts to like, okay, I have to realize something. You start to realize those things that you are not believing. You start to change. That can be with different options. So we want to hear from you exactly how was it, like how you started, how you were before you started to believe in yourself in the area of your life that you want to share with us, what happened in the middle, and then we are going to start to go from there. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Alejandro. And I feel like over the course of my life there have been multiple opportunities to believe in myself and trust myself more deeply, and I've had multiple of those turning points. But the big one that comes to mind more recently that I like to say is, I have a saying that I wasn't only burned out, I was catatonic, and there was a point in my life that I was diagnosed with medical catatonia, which is just being overwhelmed by the sheer number of medical problems that somebody has and not able to function. And I remember leaving my therapist's office. This was in New York, down in the village, and walking out of my therapist's office with this sheet of paper, 2 sheets of paper actually. One sheet had my medical and mental health diagnoses, and the other had a list of medications. And I don't know, I think there was around 15 or so medications that I was on at the time. And so I climbed into a cab and I got back to my apartment in Brooklyn. And I remember just staring at this sheet. And what was so remarkable about it is like, I didn't have any feeling about this. Like I couldn't identify a feeling in myself. I was so numbed out. And I also had a pretty severe addiction at the time. And so I was numb. And I remember sitting in my apartment. It was like the middle of the day on a work day, and not being able to connect into my feelings. I remember what was going through my head, though. It was this why me? Why does this always happen to me? Why am I the one that has the accidents and the illnesses, and why is my life not going the way that it is? And I remember feeling, although feeling is the wrong word, I remember just like having this self-pity, like oh, poor me. And things went from, bad to worse. I had been on a medication to cure one of the debilitating and life-threatening illnesses that I had at the time. And suddenly it was almost causing me to go blind. And I walked into my ophthalmologist office, and he says to me, you come off this, the blood vessels in the back of your eyes are bursting, so you need to come off this medication today. And it was my only hope for a cure at the time. And all I could stammer is like, but this is my only hope for a cure. And he said, it doesn't matter. You come off the medication today. That was so, I saw my regular doctor, and he, I remember him, just one of the best doctors in the country, really, really smart, intelligent guy who'd been with me the whole time, and, always very hopeful and very like optimistic. And he looked at me and he said, well, you're out of options. So I don't know what to tell you, go pray. And I remember thinking, like, go pray. Like, this is the advice that you're telling me. Now I understand prayer in a very different way. So I would receive that in a different way. But back then I thought, wow. And I had reached the limits of Western medicine at the time. And I went home. And again, that like, the head of like, why me? Why is this my life? This is not what I had imagined for myself. I ended, I went out and used. That was how I coped with things back then, was by using drugs and alcohol to further numb myself. And then when that stopped working, I just basically climbed into bed and pulled the covers up over my head. And I remember just being there in bed, like thinking like, God, this is, life is awful. Life is horrible. How could life do this to me? Being angry at everybody in my life. Friends were walking out. Family was calling. Like, my life got really, really, really small at this time. And I remember that night, and just so I'll pause there. But that was how I dealt with life. And actually, now I'll give you just a little bit of backstory. So, prior to this happening, I had been a vice president of talent and leadership for a global investment bank, and it was a career that I had wanted for myself for some time. Since I was a kid, I used to tell myself, I was born in California, in a small town in California called Carmel Valley, and which is country. And back when I was growing up, it was cattle ranchers and pot farmers. And we were on the pot farmer side, although my family farmed pot, but we were on the hippie side. So my parents were hippies. And I just remember, like, I always wanted to go to New York, and I always wanted to work in business, and I always wanted to work in those tall skyscrapers. So the fact that I got, and I grew up dirt poor. I tell people that I was literally raised in a barn. So, and that's the truth. I was born in a horse barn that my father had converted into living quarters. And life was pretty good, actually, those first several years of my childhood. Things got a little wacky a little bit later on, and especially into my adolescence. My father basically left. Both of my parents had their own issues around addiction and substances, and I was shuffled back and forth to different family members. So the fact that I had gotten to New York and got myself through graduate school and had landed a job, in a big company was like, it was both a source of pride and pain for me, right? Because it was like I'd be kind of walking down the hallways talking to these people, and I just felt like I never fit in. Right. I always had this perception that I was the only one who came from where I came from. I know that's not true, and I know that's so different. And you just never know, what people are going through in their lives, right? When you work with them or next to them. So that I had I don't know, succeeded is the wrong word, but that I had made it to New York, that I had a career in banking, in leadership development, that I was living in New York City, totally opposite to how I grew up, right? It was such a source of my identity then. And so to be sick and to be catatonic and to have these problems with addiction and to have this feeling of like worthlessness, right? Just this, it's like I had both that like feeling of like, wow, I don't fit in anywhere. Nobody understands, right? That feeling of being alone and that feeling of being worthless. So the illness and the being sick was just, and then not being able to fix it, because up until that point, medicine and myself had been able to fix everything. I was like, okay, I'd cobbled together enough to be okay-ish in my life that I could at least go to work and function.
And quick questioning, because thank you for the whole picture, because it's really, really great to see all the picture. So let's start first. How was your movement from being in that barn to succeeding? And I know that you are saying succeed, but succeed, as everybody says, in New York. How was that process to believing in yourself to move to that place? I know that then you were going to start to understand what happened to get to the point where you were like with these 2 pages and with the doctor telling you, pray. That's the only solution.
Thank you for that question, because it's other people. I had, I can't say that I had the most supportive family. They had their own stuff going on. My folks were really young when they had me, early 20s. They didn't know what they were doing. It was the 70s. Their friends and family were all, out there, dropping acid and mushrooms and drinking and the whole 9 yards. And that sounds a little strange out of context. So I just want to give a little context to like, they had left their families at the end, in the 60s, when, it was the line, you don't trust anybody over 30 and the system is broken, and we're going to, what was it? Tune in, turn on, and drop out was the thing. So they were caught up in that. And, and they came from families who had trauma that had been passed down from generation to generation. And I know all this now, but growing up, I didn't have that many folks, and it was just my mom and dad and me until my dad left, and then it was pretty much just me and my mom, because we weren't close with our families. And so there weren't that many folks who were like encouraging me, who were like, go to school and, do the right thing. And that And what I did have though were a number of I would say just kind of people who I have no idea who they are. I can't remember their names, but folks who encouraged me along the way. One of my first jobs after I dropped out of high school, was Macy's. I was working as an undercover security guard at Macy's in downtown San Francisco. And I would, when I'd come into work and I always loved to walk around the floor, and the salespeople knew who I was. And I remember there were these three women who worked behind like the, oh God, what is it called? Like, men have like the wallets and the fragrances and the, like, the men's items. And I just remember, I'd go and talk with them, and these ladies they would encourage me. They're like, you don't want to be stuck in this kind of job. Go to college. And I was like, go to college? Like, what are you talking about? Go to college? I dropped out of high school. I'm stupid. I'm dumb. Like this was my self-talk back then. But like these folks along the way, they were like, no, you got to do something better with your life. You got to go to college. I wish now that I knew who some of those folks were, because they just encouraged me along the way. And I can point out many of them, folks who I again don't remember their names, barely remember their faces, that encouraged me. And so from San Francisco, I ended up in Florida, and I ended up in a community college. And I got my first semester, I think it was 2 B's and a C in my grades. And I had never gotten a B before in my life in high school. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is like, what a different experience this is. And I had some amazing teachers who just encouraged me and talked with me, and people and coworkers and bosses and folks who just encouraged me along the way. And that was such a gift. And ultimately the progression, I did really well in community college. And then I went on to a really good 4-year university. And then I went on to get my master's degree, and then I did some postmaster's work as well.
And quick question, in that time that you were being encouraged, how was your self-talk? How you started to challenge that self-talk? Because it's great that you have somebody that telling you, you're amazing, you're going to do amazing things, and you have to do amazing things. But at the same time, you have your self-talk and your self-identity, like, no, you can't, you are dumb, you never done it before, you come from a family that only wants to do another thing, doesn't care about this. So how was that process okay, you have this self-talk, but at the same time you have people encouraging you. So how you started to decide, okay, I'm going to start to believe this guy is not my roots.
Well, I remember, so there was a counselor. I mean, the honest truth is that I wasn't very aware of my self-talk when I was younger. I wasn't very aware as a kid. Like I was kind of like, I don't know. I just like, I was a little clueless, into my teenage years. But I had a guidance counselor at one of the high schools that I went to, because I went to 4 high schools in 3 states before dropping out in the 11th grade.
Wow.
But there was a guidance counselor who I remember he said to me, he said, you always walk down the hall with a frown on your face and your arms crossed. And he's like, how do you think you're going to make any friends like that? Like, just like uncross your arms and just put a smile on your face. And so I did that. And I mean, it sounds like kind of a silly piece of advice today, but it helped. And so, I often went into situations, with a smile on my face, putting my best foot forward. but coming back to the self-talk. So it was really, like, and it's funny how like that simple act of putting a smile on your face when you walk into a room, and it doesn't have to be a silly smile, right? We can put on just a nice, like a happy, positive way. It changes what goes on up here for us, right? It's like suddenly we just are interacting with the world in a different way, and so so just coming back to the self talk, with I had this. It's like I had these dual. I had the angel and the devil, right, or the shadow and the light. However you want to frame those voices. And on the one hand, I had that self talk of like, dude, you can't do this. You're worthless. Like, you're insert the blank. And then on the other hand, I always had, it was like, no, you can do this. Like you're a good person. You got a good heart. Like you're going into things. So I always had sort of that conflicting narrative going on. And I'd like to share just a story, a real quick story with you, like when that changed for me, because I remember it really well. I'd been in New York, I took the subway everywhere. That's just how I got around. And I learned the subway, and it's one of my, it's one of my prides is knowing how to get around on the subway. And in New York, like the subway car will open and there'll be like staircases up to the road. And so I could get on the subway and I'd stand by the door that was closest to the stairs that would lead me to where I wanted to go to the street to save time. So that was always like a really, and I loved that. And so here I was, I had just worked probably a 10-hour day at the bank. I'm in a suit. I'm exhausted. I was in a 12-step program at the time. And so I'd gone to a meeting after work and then out to dinner with the fellowship after that. And I'm on the subway, and I was on the C and the A and the C line in New York City, if you know that, going downtown. And there's a place where the two trains come onto one track. And so I was on a train, and I'm sitting on an A train, and a C train pulls into the station, right? And so now one of these trains is going to get me home faster. One of these trains is going to go in front of the other. And I hear my mind say like, oh, go get on that train. It's going to be the one that's going to leave the station first, right? And I had, again, prided myself on being able to predict the subway schedule. So pick up my stuff and I go across. And as soon as I do, the doors close on this train and that train pulls ahead. And man, my self-talk, and I'm so grateful for this because I was finally aware of it. I was like, you so-and-so, how could you be so da, 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 just that like anger and just like this vehemence. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to myself really swear and curse myself out. And I sit there and I'm like, whoa, dude, like, wait a minute. Like, I wouldn't allow somebody else to talk to me like that. Right? And I would never talk to somebody like that. I wouldn't just never have talked to somebody like that. And I remember sitting there and I was like, that's not cool. That is not cool. You are not allowed to talk to yourself like this any longer. And I don't know what it was, but something stuck. And anytime I heard myself getting curt or short or, put myself down, I just stopped it. And it was almost like, it was in some ways, it was like being another person, right, in the room, and just being like, dude, that's not cool to talk to yourself like that.
Yeah.
And stopping it.
Wow.
So when the doctor told you to go home and pray, what happened after that?
Well, I went home and pulled the covers up over my head. and sat there for a bit, and again screaming, why me, why me? What is, why is this me? And I can still remember this very vividly, and because I've had these types of dreams repeatedly over the course of my life. I went to bed one night and I had a dream, and I had a dream that I was moving into 2 apartments at the same time. And one of them was like super nice and modern, and it had a garden, which in New York City to have like an outdoor space is like a real gem, right? And then I was moving into another apartment at the same time, and it was all dilapidated and run down, and like the ceiling was falling in and stuff. And I remember, and I'm unpacking, and I decided to stay in the dilapidated building. And somebody in my dream was helping me unpack and was like, why are you choosing to stay in this apartment and not the other one? I woke up and remembering like, oh, wow, everything is a choice. And it was like, and I call these moments of clarity. And these are these moments. I know we've all had them, right? It's like, sometimes they come in the mirror, sometimes they come when you're waking up, but just like a moment where it's like, wow, okay, my world just completely changed. And I realized that the problems that I thought I had are not my problems. I'm the problem. And my relationship to whatever I think the problem is, that's the problem. And so I realized that I had been dying for so long that I had forgotten that life is for living. And for me, it was a huge wake up call. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go out, right? Western medicine. I've reached the limits of Western medicine. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna live whatever life I have left. So no holds bar, I'm going for it. And I was like, I don't care if I charge up my credit card. I don't care. I'm going to just go like do what it is that I want to do. Because if I'm going to die, I may as well live.
Yeah.
I just quickly, Leif, because I know we are going to go deep in this area that you are talking now, but just to give the complete view of where you were at that moment, because you were saying a little bit, but you said so quickly that you were a vice president of a investment company. How you get there, and from now, why you were thinking that you were feeling like that? Because going to that place is like you are thinking in a lot of senses like you are at the top of the world in some sense, but at the same time you are feeling like this and being sick and being like nothing is working and having this self-talk. So tell us a little bit of who you were at that moment, and then we continue with the other. So just to be like, because I can be listening to this and that is amazing. But one thing is when you are in that place, I was in some areas like this, feeling the burnout in the corporate that I was. And that's why I feel what you are saying. And it's important to say like, okay, I was not, I really created something amazing in the financial world, in the corporate world. You were doing amazingly there, but that was not really fulfilling you. What was happening?
It wasn't fulfilling me. I mean, and I was living a double life. I mean, I had this double life. On the one hand, I was this, I had this big corporate job, and I was primarily working with the C-suite of the organization, and I was responsible for talent and leadership, which was identifying the best and the brightest in the organization and bringing them up through the ranks. And I'd go into work Monday through Friday in the suit, and sometimes I was sober, sometimes I was in active addiction, but I never felt like I fit in. So even though, it's funny, like I feel like, I feel like I, I got to this place in my career, and I wasn't at the top of my career. I had a lot of room for growth in corporate America. But then I got sick. And I will say this, like, there were always good times. Like, I got the opportunity to ring the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange, a few times. We were there as a group, and I was interviewed in books on the subject of talent and leadership. Like, I was somebody that people came to ask for advice in leadership development and change management. And I was, Wall Street Journal quoted me in these things. And in some ways that all just felt like part of my career, but I never had the feeling of fulfillment in that, because I was always dealing with this never feeling good enough, and not feeling worthy, and then also the hiding of my hiding of myself, hiding of my struggles, hiding of my background. So I never really felt fulfilled in corporate America. And what was interesting is, like, I would have bosses come to me, and they'd say, like, wow, we really love you, like, you're creative, right? Which is not generally a word that you would hear in these positions, but they're like, you're creative, you have different perspectives, and they're like, we love you, and here's your bonus or whatever, but wouldn't you be happier doing something else? And I would always be like, no. I'm so passionate about the bank and the people and what I'm doing, and I just love this. But yeah, it never being there it never felt like success. It never felt like the realization of the childhood dream. Yeah.
Well,
Well, so Leif, did you find that there was an incongruence? Like, did you find yourself trying to justify to yourself out of, I want to keep this job kind of justification? I don't want them to know that the gig is up? Or was it like you genuinely had convinced yourself that, hey, this is actually what I want to do?
I had genuinely convinced myself that this is what I wanted to do. But I was so numb, I was so numbed out, just from life and trauma and drama and illnesses and medications and addiction. So from all of it, I was just numbed out. And I genuinely thought I was passionate about what I was doing. And there were little cracks that would kind of come, and one of them came. So I worked for a European investment bank, and I remember being in one morning. We were in for a 5 a.m. video conference call. I had an intern working with me who was a young woman in her early 20s. I think she was still in graduate school. And I just remember we're both sitting there at 5 a.m. on this video conference call, with our colleagues in Europe, talking about something that wasn't really that important to us. Just drinking some coffee to try and be there with it. And after the video conference, and so there were these little cracks. It was like, what am I doing? Like, this is insane, right? the expectation was that even if I was in early, and I was not always, but there were points in my career where I'd make a point to be in early, but I was directly told that, you don't leave early because of the visibility. You've got to be visible to the junior staff in the organization. So even if you have no work to do, it's expected that you stay until 5 or 6, probably 6, at least, right? For that visibility factor. And I remember just thinking like, wow, that's just insane. Like there's some insanity there.
So let's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. See.
So was it the catalyst that changed all of that? Was it going through the aha moment with your meds at that time and finding, if I want to keep my sight, I have to hop off this one that's going to give me hope? Was that kind of the catalyst that went kind of snap?
That was, there were some other situations that happened in there, but yes, that was the catalyst. It was like, oh wow, I could actually die. Like I almost lost my eyesight. I could die from this. And really that was the turning point of like, and it was a wake up. It was like literally one of those moments where I'm looking at myself in the mirror and it was just like, and it was like suddenly everything became clear. It was like, oh, like I'm living the wrong way. I'm doing this and I'm going about this all wrong. Like I'm trying to move the chairs around on the Titanic, right? It was that clear to me. And so then it was like, okay. And I talk a lot about making a decision. Like if you want to change your life, if you desire to change your life, the number one thing to do is make a decision, right? To decide, like I am going to move differently. And for me, it was like, I was like, I'm from this day on, I'm moving differently. I'm going to live differently. Sometimes we have to make that decision over and over and over again. Sometimes it's once, sometimes it's a handful of times. Sometimes we have to make those decisions hundreds of times or even more. It can feel really exhausting. But it's like that decision of like, okay, that was not working. Now, move differently.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit what happened then after you started to, Western medicine is not working. You started to look for different ways, even connecting with God, or what was happening with the praying and everything to start to change how you are doing what you are doing now, because I know that is directly connected with that.
Yes. So one of the things that I had always wanted to do was do a road trip, spend, open road, camping, hiking, seeing the land, right? Seeing the country. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to take the epic road trip. This is, I'm going for it. I'm going to see as much as I can. So I packed up my car, and I did just that. I hit the road. My friends were like, "You can't do that." My primary doctor was like, "Yes, go, just go, enjoy yourself." But other folks were like, "No, you can't do that. You got to stay here. You got to get well. You got to be whatever." And I was like, "No, I've got to get out of here. Like, I've got to get out and I've got to experience the world." And there were three things that I did on that trip. I had been a photographer when I was in high school and college, and so I picked up a camera again. I thought I'll document, take pictures, make photographs of the road trip. I'd always journaled and written, and so I was like, okay. So I took a computer with me and I started a daily writing practice. I also made a little blog about the road trip. And the third thing is I had been introduced to shamanic drumming to get into altered states of consciousness a little bit earlier in the story. And so I was working with a teacher of mine at the time, and I decided to do a medicine wheel, drumming and doing some indigenous ceremonial work around, as I was traveling around, and it was such a miraculous experience for me. I mean, it just changed everything, right? Photography taught me to look at the world differently. It gave me a different perspective. There was some safety looking through the lens at that. And it also, like, I had to suddenly like crouch down to get photos or look at the light or, change my perspective. And so suddenly I was looking at things differently. I was writing. So suddenly, I was writing about my experience, my feelings, what was coming up for me, my fears, my angers, my frustration. And writing taught me what's interesting is, writing taught me, it gave me the, I like to think about writing in the way of like, this is like a controlled experience, right? But writing can introduce you into the chaos. And my life had always felt like it was chaotic. And so suddenly I could use this like controlled input to explore the chaos in a safe way. I don't know if any of that's making sense, but suddenly I had a new tool that I could explore my experience with. And harmonic drumming, I'll tell you that so the title of this is Nature is the Greatest Healer, greatest of all teachers and healers. And that has absolutely been true in my life. Going out into the wilderness and drumming, and asking for guidance and praying and screaming and releasing and just, letting it all out, like really, truly, truly transformed my life. And there was a point I remember, and I think it was coming through someplace in Utah, and we live, this is beautiful land. I mean, right, this is what a beautiful, beautiful earth that we live on, and so diverse. And so, I mean, there's just so much out there to experience. And I remember I'm driving through someplace in Utah, and I'm coming through this canyon, and there's like the trees, and the sun is setting, and it's like we're going into this canyon. You can see all the stratification in the earth and the different colors of red and yellow and orange and white and brown, and just like all of that, and looking down, and there's like a river down below, and I start weeping. Just uncontrolled weeping. And I had to pull my car over, and I'm just out, and I'm looking around, and I just, weeping at the beauty of nature. And that was, coming back to that, it was such a change for me to actually feel something, to feel moved, right, by this beauty that we all live in, and there's so much more there, because I really, nature, being in nature, camping and hiking, and being out there with the woods, in the trees, with the wind and the boulders and the canyons and the rivers and all of that. There's just there's so much guidance out there for us, right? There's so much guidance. We have this mistaken belief that that we're somehow separate from nature. In fact, we believe that we are at war with nature. We've actually created this language of being at war, like our bodies are at war. If you listen to some of the language that we use in describing our immune systems, we are at war with nature. And this is just, it's not true. It's a lie that is keeping us separate from all that wisdom, that tremendous wealth of wisdom and guidance and relief out there.
And we are almost at the end of the show, but I want to ask you something. When you were in New York doing like your vice president and doing all the things that you were doing, did you take some time to be in nature at that moment or not?
I did. Yeah. I was, I come from a very natural place that was very much part of nature. I got into camping really young. And really, one of the ways that I don't want to say survived, but one of the ways that I made New York work for me was to be in nature, constantly. So I would, and the whole East Coast, that whole Eastern seaboard is beautiful. Canada, Nova Scotia up there, and what is it? The islands that go out there, Prince Edward Island, and those islands. I mean, just breathtaking, really, really breathtaking. So I spent a lot of time.
I am asking you because you were saying when you were there, suddenly you realized that you couldn't even like feel anything. And now you are telling me you are in the middle of Utah in these canyons and you start to feel and you start to be weeping out of just the feeling. So how that changed from even when you were outside in nature in New York to start to have this new awareness, to be ready to start to feel and start to connect with nature, and start to feel like, okay, this is another person. You are talking on two different persons here.
Yes. It was the relationship. It has to do with the relationship that I developed with nature. And very clearly, like I had, I'd always gone to nature as kind of a relief. But it wasn't until I went into nature with some intention of creating relationship with. And I'll tell you that, I mean, that relation, it starts here. It's the relationship with self, right? And when we come into better alignment with self, that allows us to come into greater alignment with nature. But what shifted for me was that relationship. It's alive. I mean, we live on a living planet, right? Nature is alive. And so being out there and having that direct relationship with nature is what changed for me.
Nice. And just to finish, what are you doing now? How are you helping people now, and how they can connect with you if they want to?
Sure. So I was able to, long story short, with lots of fits and starts and lots of side trails there, but I've been able to reclaim my health, and my focus now is on optimizing health and mindset. And so I work with conscious and evolving leaders to optimize their health as a tool, as a performance tool, so that they then have greater impact. We've got to change the world. There's so much that, there's so many people that need help. The planet itself needs help. Like we've got to change the world. And if I can, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Because I'm hard-headed. Out there. And it took me a long time, but really, if I can do it, if I can find freedom and health and vitality and joy and happiness and like be in touch with my feelings, so can you. And so I have a coaching practice now, and I work only with conscious and evolving leaders, executives, folks who are looking to optimize their whole human experience. And I work a lot with nature. I help people connect into nature, and I have various coaching programs. I have a company called Gray Fox Consulting. That's GREY, Fox Consulting, and you can find me online through that website is the best way. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well. But and I'm always up for a conversation and helping people live healthier, more vital lives.
Nice. So I love your story. Thank you for being so open and telling us all the details, because it was really, I was even feeling like I was going in that road, and that was great. Even all the experience of talking about that, and really the heart behind this program is to start to open the eyes of the people. It's like if you are suffering, if you are not feeling that you are living your purpose, you are just, and you can be like Leif in the a vice president in a big company, big corporation, and feeling miserable. And that's exactly what you need to start to wake up. Okay, there is a better life than that. And I am not saying that being a vice president there is going to be bad, or doing another thing is bad, but depends on you. It depends on who are you, and who are you becoming in that process. So that's something that for us it's really important. So I like what you were saying. You were hiding from your struggles and hiding from everything, and starting from yourself. So thank you for being so open and honest with this. uh, and everybody, that if you are looking for some help on these areas, for sure we are more than welcome and happy to do it. Shanei or CJ, do you have any final comments from this amazing story from Leif?
I like to focus personally that, people often talk about in business, it's all about the profit, profit, profit. That's the bottom line. Leif, you really brought to the surface that there's a triple bottom line: people, profit, planet, and, connecting, the other two. And I think that segues into making profit more possible. But yeah, I really enjoyed your sharing today. And I think I'd like the tagline to belief in yourself and belief in your business.
That's amazing. Thanks, PJ. Leif, I just want to thank you for being on our show and encouraging people, especially who are struggling with the struggles that you have been through, people who are struggling with life and depression and other people, and also may not have a way forward. Thank you for the inspiration that you offered today.
You're welcome, and it's been my pleasure. And thank you so much for inviting me to share my story today.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Leif. So everyone, thank you for being here with us. This show can be also heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out SpanglishWorld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and leave it. Thank you all. Goodbye.